Bitcoin has broken out, but what does that mean in the grander scheme of the cycle? What does that mean when we compare it to 2019 and also 2015, 2016? What does this breakout change in terms of the historical market cycles that we see across time? Let's dive into today's episode where we're going to be talking about just that. Subscribe to the channel for more videos like this in the future. Like this video if you enjoy content like this going forward, and let's dive right into it. So when we think of Bitcoin's 5 phases, in particular, the pre-halving period, the pre-halving rally, the pre-halving retrace, post-halving resistance, and post-halving parabola, we can see these phases across time in each cycle. And when we look at these phases and try to understand them in different cycles, just to better see and expect what could we see going forward for Bitcoin's price action in this cycle, we can learn a lot of things. And when it comes to this pre-halving period, for instance, this pre-halving period in 2016 at this point in the cycle, actually, because right now we are 160 days before the halving. So at this same point in the cycle, what Bitcoin was doing is it was essentially bottoming on its retrace, which was around 25%, and bottoming at the very bottom of its reaccumulation range here in preparation for a relief rally, which is essentially consolidation within this reaccumulation range. So we were preparing for that move towards the upside inside this range, and then ultimately we broke out from this reaccumulation range to rally to new yearly highs. That's what happened at that point in the cycle. And at the same moment in time, 160 days before the halving in 2019, we also saw Bitcoin bottoming out on its correction after seeing a drawdown from this high of around 38% or so. So we were declining quite considerably at this same point in the cycle, bottoming out on that retrace and trying to form a basing period in preparation for a move up, which was essentially a relief rally before we saw a deeper retrace caused by the March 2020 situation. So here right now, at this same point in the cycle of 160 days before the halving, we're actually breaking out in Bitcoin's price action. So if we look at this zooming out, we're seeing Bitcoin break out at this point in the cycle in this 2023 cycle. Here we were just bottoming on a retrace. Here we were also bottoming on a retrace, preparing for a move up. So right now, Bitcoin is doing something totally different to what it was doing in previous cycles. It's doing the inverse of what it was doing in previous cycles. So having said that, how can we prepare and just make the most of this price action in the pre-halving period for Bitcoin? Because it is doing something different in this cycle, but that doesn't mean necessarily that we still won't see deeper retraces like we've seen at this same point in the cycle, or at least during the pre-halving period. Because if we move back to this chart here, we still saw many retracements as part of consolidation within the reaccumulation range before we saw another breakout. So still downside within a reaccumulation range, and pullbacks were the norm during this period, this pre-halving period, and not to mention even right over here where Bitcoin just retraced quite considerably. So still during this orange pre-halving period, we could still see some corrective price action. We could of course see price go even higher and then see corrective price action. But the whole idea here is that we'll probably see deeper pullbacks within this pre-halving period still. Because, of course, we've seen that in the past, but generally speaking, if we just move on to this chart here, generally speaking, pre-halving periods are still offering lots of upside volatility and downside volatility. The pre-halving period is one of those periods where it's really important to try and accumulate as much as possible on any deeper retracements. And in this next 160-day period, we're still running out of time. We're slowly running out of time as the halving approaches. So any deeper retracements here, with the next logical level to be retested after the breakout, because this is a reaccumulation range here and we broke out. So retesting the top of that region, 30 to 31, 32K as a new support, that's a logical level to watch out for. But of course, one could make the case for downside wicking even going forward. But in any case, this orange pre-halving period is really important to accumulate as much as possible on any deeper retraces as we approach the halving. Because historically, you can see that we see lots of downside volatility and upside volatility during this orange period here, but then we have the light blue pre-halving rally where we see strong continuation towards the upside, and that's around 2 months before the halving. And you can see here as well, lots of upside volatility, downside volatility during this orange pre-halving period, but in the light blue pre-halving rally, 63 days before the halving, we tend to see tremendous continuation going forward. So my point here is that we'll probably see strong continuation in this light blue square here. But for that continuation to occur, we'd probably have to see some sort of downside first, some mean reversion in price action, and a pullback to then U-shape reversal or even V-shape reversal in this light blue period to rally going into the halving. And then we have that next phase of the pre-halving retrace. After that light blue rally, we see a strong pre-halving retrace, and we saw a deeper one in 2016 and a shallower one in 2020, but it was more shallow here because of the March 2020 crash. So arguably, we couldn't see a deeper retracement at this point in the cycle, simply because we already saw an extreme sell-side capitulation that filled all those bargain buying bids, but also the last capitulation, paper hands, so to speak, capitulated into that extreme fear and maximum pessimism that came along with this strong crash. So we might see a deeper retrace during this orange pre-halving period. That's probably going to be the last deeper retrace prior to the halving. And then we have that next checkpoint, which is the pre-halving retrace, as people buy the hype and anticipate to sell the news. So essentially, people buying in anticipation of making a profit once we have the halving event occur. But as we'll see here, we see multiple months of consolidation at these highs around the halving event. And sometimes this can be extended even going into post-halving. And this is what this red region represents here, the post-halving resistance area, where we essentially see price maintain the highs, reaccumulate at highs, and this is the last reaccumulation range after the halving period before we really take off into a parabolic rally to new all-time highs. So this sort of reaccumulation after those highs made before the halving, this is where we maintain price action at steady levels in preparation for the next uptrend, and this takes multiple weeks for that reaccumulation to finally conclude. And that's something that many people don't realize buying into the halving. They expect short-term spikes in price action towards the upside to make a profit, but actually we see that the most appreciation in price occurs after the halving in the post-halving parabolic phase of the cycle. And so once we finally break out from that reaccumulation period, this is where we enter the parabolic stage of the market cycle, where Bitcoin accelerates the most, makes the most gains, and rallies to new all-time highs. And that's something that will occur after the reaccumulation phase, which is probably going to be the last basing period, substantial basing period for Bitcoin before we enter those parabolic highs for Bitcoin and that parabolic uptrend. So those are the 5 phases of the Bitcoin halving cycle. And at the moment, Bitcoin is doing something completely different to what it did at this same point in the cycle in the pre-halving periods in 2019 and also 2016. But having said that, even though it's outperforming Bitcoin a little bit in the short term right now, it's still possible that Bitcoin could see a deeper retrace in this pre-halving period, because a deeper retrace is probably needed for Bitcoin to enjoy a strong rally in the light blue pre-halving period. And then once again, another retrace into a reaccumulation period that will break us out to new all-time highs in the parabolic price action that occurs after the halving, many months after the halving. So that's about it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel for more videos like this in the future. Like this video if you enjoyed this video, and I'll speak to you in the next one. Speak to you soon.